Shabbat Shalom, happy Sabbath. Again, this morning, we're thankful beyond words that Yah has been good to us, and we have come to worship him in spirit and in truth. Our subject this morning is vessels of clay in the hands of Yah. Vessels of clay in the hands of Yahweh. We ought not to forget that Yah has control over all things. He's sovereign. He's supreme. And therefore, we are just that. Vessels of clay. So, in order to address this subject this morning, I would first like for you to join me in the book of Hosea chapter 12, and we will look at verse 10. Shall I speak to the prophets? Though I have multiplied visions and by the ministry of prophet made comparisons. I'm reading here from the Septuagint. In the English translation, it says similitude. I have spoken to the prophets and I've given them visions and have made comparisons. Verse 11, was it only because of Gilead? There are liars indeed in Gilead, chiefs sacrificing, but their altars were like heaps in an uncultivated field. Yah wants you to know that when he wants to send a message to a people, he gives to a prophet or prophets visions, and he uses similitudes and he makes comparisons so that they can use that which they see to look beyond and into that which they cannot see. That's the point this prophet Hosea wishes to make this morning. That Yah uses the pictorial things of this world, the view, that which is tangible, and then he asks the prophet or prophets to study this and use it as a periscope to look into and on that which they cannot see, the unseen. Case in point, come with me to the book of Jeremiah that we just read, and I want to address this topic this morning in three phases. One, I want to look at the individual as a clay. I want to look at the nation or kingdoms as a clay, a piece of clay. And then I want to look at it universally as a clay, the universe or the earth, the people in the earth as a piece of clay, and how Yah, the superlative Yah, controls and makes into different pieces of clay. Come with me to Jeremiah chapter 18. Jeremiah chapter 18. Again, a word of Yah came to Jeremiah a second time. That was chapter 33. It came to him a second time while he was still in prison, in court of the prison, saying, thus saith Yah, the maker of the earth. I want to emphasize that point, that he is the maker of the earth, who formed it, that he might regulate it. His name is Yah. Cry to me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and marvelous things which thou hast not known. You get my point? He's going to show Jeremiah great and marvelous things that Jeremiah hitherto had not known, but he's going to use the physical to explain to him that which he cannot see. Now come with me to chapter 18. And the word which came to Jeremiah from Yah, saying, arise and go down to the house of the potter, and there thou shalt hear my words. So I went down to the house of the potter, and behold, he was making a piece of work on stones. Yah wants Jeremiah to go down to the potter's house and to examine the work of the potter. And by his examination of the work of the potter, Jeremiah would readily and distinctly apprehend and comprehend the truth of which Yah has designed for him to know. And thereafter, Jeremiah, having apprehended the truth, would wisely explain to the people what he had seen, and they too would come to the aggregate understanding that Yahweh has an incontestable authority and an irresistible capacity to do that which he wants to do, and to form kingdoms and nations and people, and nobody can contend with him because he is the great potter and we are the clay in his hand. Hence our topic today, clays of vessels, or vessels of clay. In the end, may I qualify that, of a mighty Yah. That's our topic today. That Yah has a clear title above any other man, above any other being, that he has dominion over the world. Go down, Jeremiah, go down to the potter's house, and you watch how they form these vases and pots and pans, and watch how they put them on the wheel. You know, Ezekiel saw the wheel, did he not? And how that happens. And in time, Jeremiah, I will put that vessel, that piece of clay, in the fire of temptation and persecution. And when that piece of clay has been through the kiln of trials, then we know that piece of clay has matured into a vase. Notice when a potter makes a vessel, the potter wants the vessel to be on show, in a place where people can see that vessel and know that vessel is well made. Are you with me? So Yah sends Jeremiah down to the potter's house. And so Jeremiah would understand what it means way back in Genesis 2, when Yah says he formed man out of clay and placed him on a show in the Garden of Eden. Are you following me? Let's read on. Jeremiah says, so I went down to the house of the potter, and behold, he was making a piece of work on stones, and the vessel which he was fashioning in his hand fell. The Septuagint says fell. The King James says mar. Are you with me? So first, I want to look at the piece of clay as an individual. So come with me to the book of Acts. The book of Acts, that's Acts chapter 9, we're going to look at. And look at the individual as a clay. You and I are individuals that are made out of clay. And the word here says, and Shaul, that's the apostle Paul, was breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of Yeshua, went unto the high priest. He went to the Sanhedrin and desired of him letters. He wanted approval to go to Damascus, to the synagogue, that if he found any in the way, that's those who are following Yeshua, whether they were men or women, it mattered not to him, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Paul was trying to persecute the early believers. And he journeyed, he came to near Damascus, that's Syria, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven. And he fell. He did what? He fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Shaul, Shaul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, why art thou, sir? Who art thou, sir? And Yeshua said, I am Yeshua of Nazareth, whom thou persecuted. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. Now understand something here. Yeshua wants you to know that when you persecute those who he sent to do his work, and when you frown at them or you do anything that is in opposition to the truth that they bring, you're doing it unto him. And that's the same thing he was stating in Matthew chapter 25 when he said, I was in prison and you came and you visited me. I was sick and you came and you visited me. And the people would then ask and say, Master, when did we do that? He said, the least you do unto one of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. So he says, when you persecute those whom he has sent out with a message, you're doing it unto him. And that's what Paul was doing until he was struck down on the road to Damascus. And the way the word said that he was just shocked. Verse 10 says, and there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And Yeshua said to him in a vision, here again, he speaks to them, the prophets and his people in visions. Ananias, and he said, behold, I am here, sir. And Yeshua said unto him, arise and go into the street, which is called Straight. Did you get that? Paul was on a bent intention, a bent road, traveling to go and persecute Yah's people. And when he's struck down and he's about to be corrected, Yah sent him to straight streets. If the preacher is not preaching straight to you, then you know what road he's on. The word is straight. And so Paul was sent to Straight Street and inquire, Ananias is told, and inquire in the house of Judah for one called Shaul of Tarsus, for behold, he prayeth. And I had seen in a vision a man named Ananias. Ananias, go there because I have already showed Paul in a vision who you are and that you're coming. And so Yah is also showing Ananias who Paul is in a vision. So the two dreams connect. I speak to my prophet in similitude, in comparisons. Then Ananias answered, Sir, I have heard many of this man, many things about this man, how much evil he hath done to the saints of Jerusalem. I know him. He's notorious. And you want me to go and address this man who is notorious persecutor of the brethren? Ananias, as we would be, kind of fearful to face a man like this. But Yah had already humbled Paul on the road to Damascus and had made him more pliable in the end, because Paul now is a different kind of clay, and he's about to be made a more supple piece of clay. And so Ananias is inquiring of Yah, how can you send me to this man? Verse 15, but Yeshua said unto him, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel. Are you with me? You mean that Paul, who is working for the Sanhedrin and is persecuting the believers, you are now letting me know, that he's a chosen vessel? Yes. He is a chosen vessel unto me to hear my name, to bear my name before nations and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Did you hear me? Understand where I'm going with this. Yah is saying Paul is now a different kind of what? Clay. I'm going to make him into a different vessel. And when I make him into that vessel, I will put him into the fire of persecution, that kiln, and that will mature him. Because as you well know, when the vessel is made, it has to be fired. Right now, Paul is unfired. So he's just a piece of clay, but he's not fired to be made tough. But Yah says he will find out soon how much things he will have to suffer for my name's sake. And so Peter picks this up because the Apostle Peter understands this even as we should. And Peter says, so when these things happen to you, you behave as if it's a kind of a strange thing, these fiery trials. No, they are making you a better piece of clay. That's what Peter wants you to know. And so, I just wanted you to see that Yah has the capacity, the ability. If you have the potential to become a clay, a supple piece of clay in his hand without falling out, even as Jeremiah found out that the clay that he was making was a piece of clay that fell. Jeremiah was being shown the work of the potter so he can understand the wider context of mankind in the hand of Yah. So let's go back to the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah, because the word says Jeremiah was sent down to the potter's house. And perhaps we ought to look at where the potter's house is. Where is the potter's house? Well, let's look at Matthew 27. I'm still reading from Jeremiah 18, but I'm in Matthew 27. That's the irony of this message. Are you with me? And the word says, and he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple, we're speaking now of Judas, and departed and went and hanged himself. And the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, it is not lawful for to put them in the treasury because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field. Are you with me? To bury strangers in. Wherefore the field was called the field of blood unto this day. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken of Jeremiah the prophet, saying, and they took 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them for the potter's field, and Yah appointed me. Are you following? Jeremiah was told to go down to the potter's house and watch out the potters, because the potters would get this deep red clay from this piece of land, and they would make the vessels from that clay that was taken out of the land, and they would make the utensil for the temple. So when the potters take the clay from the land, take that nourishing clay from the land was left barren. It was not good for even farming. It was a barren land. So it became a wasteland. And the word here in Matthew wants you to know it was bought with the 30 pieces of silver, and it became a cemetery to bury strangers. The officials were not buried here, but only the so-called poor people, the riffraff in their eyes. And so today, even today, when you hear that such and such a man is at a pauper's funeral or burial, this is what it means. That the strangers were buried here, because remember, the Jews would not be buried in the same place as the Gentiles. These are strangers. And so Jeremiah is told to go there. Go down here and examine it. You wonder now, don't you, what in fact did Ezekiel saw when he said, I saw all dry bones in Ezekiel chapter 37. And whether Ezekiel was making also reference to this place, because this is where all the bones are. This is where it was a rubbish heap. This is where Manasseh and all the other people were burning their children in this rubbish heap. This is what we call Gehenna. This is where the dump is. And Jeremiah is told, go down to the potter's house and look. And when you have seen the work of the potter and how they make these fine pots and vases and you know, even transparent porcelain, you could send to Christie's or Sotheby's and watch them, even in Stoke-on-Trent, the land of the pottery. Just learn this incontestable truth that I'm giving you to take to the people. He says, can I not now, Jeremiah, can I not make Israel, you see, I've done with the individual, and now dealing with the nation or the kingdom. Can I not make Israel the way the potter makes this clay into a vessel? Can I not do that? He's asking the question, which is almost rhetorical. I have taken Israel from Egypt when they were not a people, because I promised this to Abraham in chapter 12 and chapter 15 and Genesis. I did all that. I made a covenant with him. And so I fulfilled my covenant. And now I'm taking them. They are like a piece of clay. And I'm taking them and I want to make them into a better, because that piece of clay that I took from Egypt, when I brought them into the promised land, they did not listen to me, and it became marred in my hand. Marred. It fell. They fell. Now you understand when we talk about the fall of man, what we really mean. It means that clay fell out of Yah's hand. Not that Yah was careless. It's never that. But that we don't want to be formed into the shape that he wants to form us. Are you with me? We spin off the wheel and we cry out and we refuse to go into the fire of what? Persecution, even as Paul had to and Israel had to. Because what he did, the word says that when he took Israel out of Egypt, he did not take them the easy way. He took them into the wilderness, which was a test. That was their fiery trial, was to make them tough in that kiln. But they failed. The word tells us of all the people, men who were worthy of fighting in battle, only 2 were saved, Caleb and Joshua, after the census was made. The subject is vessels of clay in the hands of Yah, vessels of clay. And so we just read that which happened when they bought the field of blood, the potter's field. It says here that was fulfilled, that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet. Now I understand what's happening here. Although the word said that it was spoken by Jeremiah, if you search the whole book of Jeremiah, you would not see that in Jeremiah. So you better come with me to Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 11. And we will read verses 12 to 14. And he says, and I said unto them, if ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. Are you with me? So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. They weighed up. They examined the whole thing and how much Yeshua was worth. And they said, he's worth 30 pieces of silver. And Yah said unto me, cast it into the potter. A good price, a goodly price that I was priced at of them. And I took 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of Yah. Then I cut asunder mine own staff, even bands, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Notice, it says the word was spoken by Jeremiah, but it was recorded by Zechariah. Understand that. It was spoken by Jeremiah. They priced him. Understand that the whole concept here, that they did it as if he was some common slave. Because when you read Deuteronomy chapter 23 and verse 18, they were told it was forbidden to bring the price of a whore or a dog into the temple. And they considered it as filthy gain. And the hypocrisy of it all is that these men paid Judas 30 pieces of silver, and when Judas brought it back and threw it back to them, they said, we can't take it. We can't bring it into the temple because it's blood money. It was they who gave it to him, blood money. So once Judas received the chief priest 30 pieces of silver for betraying Yeshua, and you can read that in Matthew 26, 40 to 16, he returned the money to them, and the word said he committed suicide. And as I indicated, they most hypocritically refused to have this blood money. So they placed this money in their own coffers to purchase what? A piece of land. And the piece of land was to bury strangers. They bought the potter's field in which they bury foreigners. So when we read in Acts chapter 19, we better go there because this matter is quite interesting. Acts chapter 19, let's go there. Acts chapter 1, I should say. Acts chapter 1. The word says in verse 19, and it was well known unto all the dwellers in Jerusalem, inasmuch as the field is called in their own tongue. That means Aramaic. In the Aramaic tongue, it is called Akeldama. That is to say, the field of blood. But in the Greek, they call it the potter's field. And so let's read also verse 24. And they prayed and said, Thou, Yahweh, which knoweth the hearts of men, show us which thou, these two men, they had chosen two people, Barsabba and Mattanias, who would replace Judas. So we see that Judas was replaced because the implication here that Judas had the money from which he gave, they had bought a piece of land for it. Now, we also read that Judas himself had bought a piece of land. We're not sure if it's the same land because Judas could not have bought the land if he died. Because the word said he was buried, he was put in his own place. Judas bought a piece of land. Are you with me? So this 30 pieces of silver was used by the potter's field. And the field was used to bury strangers, to give paupers a decent funeral. That's where the word said that Judas went and his entrails, his bowels, fell out. So you understand Paul to be one piece of clay and Judas to be another piece of clay. And so you'll understand that when we read 2 Timothy chapter 2, come with me there, 2 Timothy chapter 2, 20 to 22, it says, but in the great house, in what? In the great house. You remember in John chapter 14, he said, let not your what? Your heart be what? Troubled. Why? Because in my Father's house, there are what? There are many mansions, and had it not been so, I would have told you, I have gone to prepare a place for you, and I will come again and receive you to myself. And there where I am, you are going to be with me there. The great house. Are you with me? So, but in the great house, we're reading Timothy, 2 Timothy, there are not only vessels of gold, of silver, but also of wood and earth, some of honor, like Paul, and some of dishonor, like Judas. So the question, therefore, today must be for us to examine ourselves and see whether we be vessels of honor or vessels of dishonor, like Pharaoh was. You know, it is interesting that God makes some people, and they are quite honorable in the work that they do, and some are dishonored. The word says that Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He was a dishonor. But even the honorable and the dishonor is bringing what? Is bringing glory to Yah, because Yah said to Moses in regards to this dishonorable piece of clay called Pharaoh, Yah said, I'm going to send my plagues, and I'm going to let my name be known in Egypt, and my power, my glory will be shown. Because Pharaoh said, I don't know your Yah. And as we discussed in Sabbath school, there are some of these people today, scientists and others, who are giving themselves credit because they don't know Yah. And so Yah is going to use their dishonor to bring glory to himself. If you understand that. Go down there, Jeremiah, to where you see those dry bones, where you see those dead people. The world looks like that now, doesn't it? People who don't know Yah. They are down in the valley of Enon. That's what it's called. Gehenna. That's where they are. Go down there and speak to the people. But Paul wants Timothy to know, and the church to know, that when you see people in politics and elsewhere, and you see them doing things, these are vessels of dishonor. And they are vessels of honor. You stay with me, Yah is saying, in the work that I've asked you to do, and you will be a vessel of honor. So whether you be vessel of honor or you be a vessel of dishonor, each person is doing Yah's bidding. They don't know this, but the word is letting us know that that is what is happening. And Peter is wanting you to know in 1 Peter 4 and verse 12, beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is come try you. No, it's not strange. These things must happen to you because you're a piece of clay and you're being put in the fire to be toughened up, to become a vessel of honor. That's what Peter wants you to know, that we are vessels of honor. Jeremiah was told in chapter 7, the verses tells us that from verse 31 to 34, talking about the valley of Enon, which is the same place as the potter's field, which is also where Judas went and hanged himself. Basically, the 30 pieces purchased the field, but also purchased the curse of the land. Understand that. So Judas is a partial fulfillment of that. But in AD 70, the fulfillment came when Titus came in and destroyed the place. And we've got to understand that there are vessels of clay, and there are good ones, and there are bad ones. And each is bringing glory to Yah. So come with me to 2 Kings. 2 Kings, and we will look at chapter 23. 2 Kings chapter 23, and we will read verse 10. And he defiled Topheth, which is the valley of the children of Enon. This is the same place. We're speaking here of Josiah, good Josiah the king, who was now cleansing the place and tearing down all the Baal worship. Well, let me read from earlier on, where it says, from verse 4, and the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priests of the second order and the keepers of the door to bring forth out of the temple of Yahweh all the vessels that were made for Baal. Did you get that? This is the temple in Jerusalem, and they had made vessels to worship Baal in Yah's house, as people are doing today, some unwittingly. And so Josiah comes on the scene, and he's cleaning the place, and he says, bring me these vessels. Let's read it. And the keepers of the door to bring forth out of the temple of Yahweh all the vessels that were made for Baal and for the sacred poles and for all the hosts of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. And he put down the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the shrines in the cities of Judah and in the places round about Jerusalem, them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun worship, and to the moon worship, and to the planets, and to all the hosts of heaven. And he brought out the sacred pole for the house of Yahweh without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people. He brought it and he dumped it exactly where we said, in the valley of Hinnom. That's where Jeremiah was saying. Verse 9, nevertheless, the priests of the shrines came not up to the altar of Yahweh in Jerusalem, but they did eat of the unleavened bread among their brethren. And he defiled Topheth, which is the valley of the children of Enon, that no man might make his son or daughter to pass through the fire of Molech. And he took away the race horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun at the entering of the house of Yahweh by the chamber of Nathan, the king's chamberlain, which was in the suburbs, and the burned chariots of the son of fire. the churches today could do with a Josiah, couldn't it? Oh, yes, it could do with a Josiah. So he cleansed the place and he put them in Tophet. He put them in the valley of Enon. He put them down there where Jeremiah was sent. Because Yah wants us to know that he is the one who perfects the clay. And if you find yourself doing contrary to what Yah has asked you to do, then you know instantly that you are a vessel of dishonor. Let's read again Acts chapter 1. Acts chapter 1, and we will read verses 18 and 19. Now this man, well, let's read 17. For he was numbered with us, that's Judas, he was among the disciples, and had obtained part of this ministry. He was part of the ministry. Luke wants you to know that because a person is a member of your church, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person's loyalty is there. And Luke here is saying, for he was numbered with us and obtained part of this ministry. He was part of the 12. Now this man, this is Judas, purchased a field. And this is why I was trying to mention it earlier, that if Judas purchased a field, it cannot be the same field that they purchased with the money that he threw back to the leaders of the Jews. Let's read it. Now this man purchased the field with the reward of iniquity. And falling headlong, he burst asunder in the midst, and all his bowels gushed out. And it was known unto all the dwellers of Jerusalem, inasmuch as the field is called in the tongue Akeldama, that is the field of blood. For it is written in the book of Psalm, let his habitation be desolate, and no man dwell therein, and his office let another take. So, is it a different field or is it the same field? Because it says he purchased the field, and if he purchased the field, he would have to have done that while he was alive, which means perhaps he was siphoning off the money because he was a treasurer. I throw that out for your consideration, but it may well have been the same field. But it here says that he purchased the field. Now, he can't purchase the field after he died. So if he did purchase the field, it must have been before, and therefore, if it was before, it wasn't with the 30 pieces of silver. And that's the only point I want to make on that, to show you how cruel this man was, that, as Luke said, he was part of the ministry, but he had no loyalty to the ministry. He had none. He saw the good works. He was a recipient, eyewitness to all the miracles that Yeshua performed and the teachings that Yeshua gave. He was a recipient of that. But then he decided that he was going to examine Yeshua and see how much he is worth. He went to the leaders and they decided, according to what Zechariah said, that he's worth 30 pieces of feather. And they sold him like a common criminal. Wow. Judas, one of his disciples, did that. He was a vessel of dishonor. And today we know that there are many vessels of dishonor in Yah's assembly. We can tell them by their work. We don't have to hazard a guess. Yeshua said, you know them by their work. A good tree, produce good fruit. We know that. And so we see the distinction, the juxtaposition between Paul and Judas. Paul was persecuting the church, and Yah put him in his hand and made him a vessel of honor. Yah himself said it, Yeshua. He said, he is a chosen vessel. He said, I'm going to make Paul a transparent porcelain. I'm going to put him on my table, and the world will see how this piece of clay became what it is, a trophy. But I will show you at the same time Judas Iscariot, who was a part of this ministry. In fact, he was in an even more privileged position. He was part of the 12. Paul was not a part of the 12. But he turned away and became a vessel of dishonor. And that's what we're talking about in Jeremiah chapter 18. That it fell out of the hand. There is an advert, I don't know if you see it in England, over here in America, and it's depicting a insurance company, and at the end of the advert, they say, are you in good hands? That's Allstate. They're asking the people, are you in good hands? And perhaps we ought to borrow that quote and ask you this morning, are you in good hands? Who is your potter? Who is your potter? And so as we look at that, we want to look at Bereshit. Because having looked at Israel and having looked at Paul, let's look at it universally now. Bereshit chapter 2. Bereshit chapter 2. We'll read from verse 6. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And Yahweh formed man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into him, into his nostrils, the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. And Yah planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. So we're looking at it universally now. Yah took up one piece of clay, and he wants Jeremiah to know, Jeremiah, I am the original potter. I formed this man ex nihilo. I made him out of nothing. I formed him, I created him, and I did this out of clay. And I made him into a superb vessel. Because when I with him, to myself and to others, this is very good. Everything that I made is very good. And man was the crowning act of Yah's creation on the sixth day. But the word said that he was now put into the kiln of Eden, hear me, to be tested, to be tried, to be fired, to make him tough. There is a difference between hardness and toughness. One can withstand all kind of pressure, but the one that is hard is usually brittle, like cast iron. Remember that. And some of us, we have tempers that are so easily broken, frail, brittle. And Yah wants to remake you because you didn't even know that you fell out of his hand. Adam was put in the garden, and then the angel, pretended angel of light, we call Satan, came and was now trying him, but he was doing it subtly. He was messing with the work of Yah, that vessel that Yah had made called Adam, and Yah had left him there to be toughened out. But Satan tricked his wife, and his wife deceived him, and he willingly followed her, and the word says he fell. That's the fall of man. And that's what the Septuagint is saying in chapter 18 of Jeremiah. It fell. That's what we call the fall of man. He fell out of Yah's hand. That beautiful vase, that beautiful piece of clay that Yah sculpted, we call Adam, fell out of his hand. And remember, it was only one piece of clay, because according to the book of Luke, chapter 17 and verse 26, or is it Acts, he says, I have made what? All nations of one blood. Acts 17. I have made all nations of one blood. So when Adam fell, all the pieces of clay that were tied up in his loins fell too. Jeremiah, go down. Go down to the valley and look and see what you see. Go and see. And Jeremiah said, I did. And what I saw was not pleasant. Was not pleasant at all. So let's go to 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles chapter 11. And we will read from verse 12. And in every several city, he put shields and spears and made them exceeding strong, having Judah and Benjamin on his side. And the priests and the Levites that were all in all Israel resorted to him out of the coast. For the Levites, verse 14, for the Levites left their suburbs and their possession, and came to Judah and Jerusalem, for Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto Yahweh, and he ordained him priests for the shrines and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. Did you get that? Let me say this. The Levites were in the land of Ephraim, where the 10 tribes are. Judah and Benjamin was down south. When the Levites realized that the worship that Jeroboam had established up north is ungodly, is unyahly, he was not Yahwistic. They left the north, the word says here in 2 Chronicles, and they came down south. These were the priests. So I hear people ask the question, So what is it you want us to do? The answer is simple. If in your church, in your synagogue, in your assembly, the priests are not speaking what Yah says and are practicing the same thing that Jeroboam said, what did Jeroboam do? Jeroboam changed the date of the feast. And as we read what Josiah did, Josiah got rid of the people who were worshiping the sun and the moon. And he killed the priests. I'm not suggesting you do that, but I'm saying that you have a responsibility and a duty of care to your own soul to get up, like the priest here. And they left the north and came south, where true worship was in Jerusalem. It's there. It's there. So if you remain, you may just end up being what? A vessel of what? Dishonor. That's what you might be. Might I remind you of Shemot chapter 32? Let's go there, and we'll read from verse 15. And Moses turned and went down from the mount, and the two tables of the testimony were in his hand. The tables were written on both their sides, and on the one side and on the other were they written, and the tables were the work of Yah. And the writing was the writing of Yah, graven up on the tables. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a noise of war in the camp." And he said, "It is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither is it the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear." They're worshiping. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, like some of the churches today, and Moses' anger waxed up. These pastors don't care. You can dance until midnight. And it doesn't matter whether it is Shabbat ranks or Bujabanta. You can still dance. And it's all right to them. Not with Moses. And he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them between the mount. He was angered because the worship was not one that was prescribed by Yah. But that's not how it is today. People just do as they feel. They do as they feel. But Yah said, I'm going to make a covenant. I'm going to make a covenant. And I'm going to make it with who? I'm going to make it with Israel. Hear me? And there are those who have set their eyes on geographical Israel. And there are those who beat their chest and say, we were born in Israel. And there are those who are convinced they are the seed of Abraham, wherein Moses says they're Gentiles, and Yeshua himself said that they're the synagogue of Satan. They say that. But Paul wants you to know in Galatians 6:16, the Israel of Yah has nothing to do with the first birth, but has all to do with the new birth. Because when you're born again, when you're remade again, in a different piece of case, the word says you're a what? New creature. You are a new creature. You have been born again. Nicodemus did not understand that. And many today are doing exactly what the king did. So let's go to Jeremiah again. Jeremiah, and we will look at Jeremiah chapter 36. Jeremiah chapter 36. Because it is important that we understand what happened here. And it came to pass in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Remember what Josiah did. Josiah had a revival like there was none like it. He cleansed and got rid of, killed those evil priests and made that parcel of land we call the land of blood a dump. That's where we put all the rubbish in Jerusalem. But now it says a son who, Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that the word came unto Jeremiah from Yahweh. Remember, Jeremiah preached for 40 years, saying, take thee a roll of a book and write therein the words that I have spoken unto against Israel and against Judah and against all the nations from the day I spake unto thee and from the days of Josiah even unto this day. Write it down. Write it down. It may be that the house of Judah will hear. And you know, as we speak the word of Yah, we just hope that the Church of England will hear us. We speak that the Catholic will hear us. We really do speak, and we really want the Seventh-day Adventist to hear us. We want the Episcopalian to hear us. We want the Seventh-day Baptists to hear us. We want the Mormons to hear, but not so much to hear us, but to hear what Yah is saying through us. That's what the word is saying. And Jeremiah was that prophet, and you know, his own ministry and the way he did ministry has given even a new word to the English language. To be Jeremiah means that you're a gloomy kind of person when you are Jeremiah. And right now, I think anyone who has their eyes on you would be very much Jeremiah about the condition of the world. And so he wants Judah to hear him. Then Jeremiah, verse 4, called Baruch, that's his secretary, his scribe, the son of Neriah, and Baruch wrote from the mouth. He's taking dictation here from Jeremiah. Now, often we have Bible study and we ask people to write things down, and they don't write it down, and they come back next week and they don't remember anything. Notice how studious Baruch here is. Jeremiah is speaking, he's taking dictation. And I believe he did shorthand because he must have done shorthand to keep up in touch with Jeremiah. And Jeremiah commanded Baruch, saying, I am in prison. I cannot go into the house of Yahweh. So you go for me. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes you are not in a particular place and you ask people to do things for you and they can't do it because they're too busy. Jeremiah said, I'm in prison, I'm locked up, but the word has to go out. We cannot allow the word not to go out. Come help me. And the word says, and Jeremiah commanded Baruch, saying, I am in prison, I cannot go into the house of Yahweh, therefore go thou and read in the scroll which thou hast written from my mouth, and the words of Yahweh in the ears of the people in Yahweh's house unto the fasting day, and also thou shalt read them in the ears of Judah that come out of the cities. I can't do it, you do it for me. And Baruch the son of Neriah, verse 8, did according to all that Jeremiah the prophet commanded him, reading in the book of the words of Yahweh in Yahweh's house. And it came to pass in the 5th year of Jehoiakim the son of Josiah, the king of Judah, in the 9th month, that they proclaim a fast before Yahweh to all the people in Jerusalem and to all the people that came from the cities of Judah unto Jerusalem. Then read Baruch in the book of the words of Jeremiah in the house of Yahweh, in the chamber of Gemariah, the son of Shaphan, the scribe, in the inner court, in the entry of the new gate of Yahweh's house, in the ears of all the people. You'll see Shapham's name mentioned a number of times, even in Ezekiel, because he was one of those with Hilkiah who had found the book of Deuteronomy, the book of the law that was read. And when Josiah heard it read, Josiah said, no, we got to come back to Yah. But the point here is these men heard the word, and when they hear the word, and they were stricken by what the word had to say to them, they decided the king needs to hear this. Are you with me? When you hear the truth of Yahweh's word being preached, and you get it, and you comprehend what is being said, you must think to yourself, I wish my brother, my cousin, my uncle would hear this. My daughter, my son would hear this. Jeremiah was just like you. This, I cannot contain this. Other people need to know this. That's what was being said. Verse 12. Then he went down into the king's house, into the scribe's chamber. And lo, all the princes sat there, even Elishama the scribe, and Deliah, the son of Shemaiah, and Elnathan, the son of Achishbal, and Gemariah, the son of Shapna, and Zedekiah, the son of Ananiah, and all the princes. The princes here are listening to what Baruch has written at the dictation of Jeremiah, and they think this is powerful stuff. We want the king to hear this. This is beyond us. Then Micaiah declared unto them all the words that he had heard, when Baruch read the book in the ears of the people. Therefore, all the princes sent Jehudi, the son of Nathaniel, the son of Shelemiah, the son of Cushi. They sent this African man, this Ethiopian man, and they said, you go and read it. And Baruch saying, take in thine hand the roll wherein thou hast read in the ears of the people, and come. So Baruch the son of Neriah took the roll in his hand and came unto them, and they said unto him, sit down now and read it in our ears. So Baruch read it in their ear. Now it came to pass, when they had heard all the word, they were afraid. When was the last time you read God's word and you were afraid? They were afraid, both one to another, and said unto Baruch, we will surely tell the king all of these things. The king needs to know. Verse 20, and they went into the king, into the court, but they laid up the roll in the chamber of Elishama the scribe, and told all the words of the ears of the king. So the king sent, Send Jehudi. This is the African man, to fetch the roll. And he took it out of Elishama, the scribe's chamber. And Jehudi, the man's name is Judah, read it in the ears of the king and in the ears of all the princes, and stood beside the king. Now the king sat in the winter house in the 9th month, and there was a fire on the earth beneath, burning before him, And it came to pass that when Jehudi, this son of Cushi, had read 3 of the 4 leaves, he cut it, the king, this is, cut it with his penknife and cast it into the fire that was on the earth until all the roll was consumed in the fire that was on the earth. The king burned the word of Yah. Wow. But ignoring the word of Yah and not adhering to it is no better than burning the word of Yah. And so when that was done, they were told to write it again. You don't like what I'm saying? I'm going to say it again. Write it again. And the king, verse 26, commanded Jeremiah, the son of the king, and Sariah, the son of Azrael, and Shelemiah, the son of Abdiel, to take Baruch the scribe and Jeremiah the prophet, but Yahweh hid them. Stay with me. Then the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah after that the king had burned the roll, that the words which Baruch wrote at the mouth of Jeremiah, saying, take thee again another roll and write it. He remembered it. Yah had given him good recall. All that he wrote before, he remembered it and he wrote it again. And this time he had it some more. He says the king will die in Babylon. The point here is if you don't come out of Babylon, you too will die in Babylon. Take thee again, verse 28, another roll and write it in all the former words that were in the first roll, which Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, had burned. And thou shalt say to Jehoiakim, king of Judah, thus saith Yahweh, thou hast burned this roll. We could easily say, so you have ignored the word of Yah, you have ignored the feast days, you have ignored the Sabbath. Why hast thou written therein, saying, the king of Babylon shall certainly come and destroy this land, and shall cause to cease from thence men and beasts? You suffer the consequences of what you've done. That's what Jeremiah told his scribe to write. And therefore, this writing of Jeremiah is as relevant as tomorrow he writes to us. He writes to us. And that's what John in 1 John 2 and verse 7 is letting us know. Brethren, I write a new commandment. Right? Unto you. It can't be the same people he's writing to, because Jeremiah was before John. And John said, I'm writing to you. But he said, although it is new, it's not new, it's old. It's an old commandment which he had from the beginning, from Genesis. This commandment was there. The old commandment is the word which ye have heard from the beginning. It's not old. It's not new. It's old. The only difference is, at one point, he put it on tablets of stone. Now he reverts back to put it in your heart. That's what he's saying. And 1 Peter 3 verse 12 says, for the eyes of Yah are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to what? Their prayer. He is. And Ephesians 2:10 says what? The hands and the eyes and the attention is because the potter has a plan for the clay. That's why he's watching you. Yes? Yah has a plan for you, not just to save you, but to use you for his glory as a vessel. That's what he wants to do. You remember those vessels that Belshazzar took out of the temple and brought down to Babylon, and then decided to pour liquor in them. And then when Yah saw that very night, he brought up Cyrus, King Cyrus, the Persian king, who walked through the bed of the Euphrates River, came up and took Babylon. And at that particular night, that said night, Belshazzar paid with his life for messing with these holy vessels. Now, remember what I said, that Yah used physical things to teach us physical lessons. So what do you think will happen to those who messed with Yahweh's spiritual vessels in these last days? They will end up like Belshazzar. They will fall even at their own banquet, at their own dance, at their own party. They will fall because they have become vessels of dishonor. We need to remember we are vessels of clay in the hands of Yah, but we are vessels of honor. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.